Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today we are kicking off our coverage of the Regulation I VGC format. This brand new format allows for 2 restricted Pokemon per team, and to kick things off, I wanted to feature a team that features Koraidon as well as Lunala. If you followed the end of Regulation G, Koraidon and Lunala were 2 of the top picks going towards the end of the format and were really rising in popularity, so I figured, why not use a team that features both of them? This team is really offensive and features pieces like Focus Sash, Flutter Mane, Max Speed with Icy Wind. You've also got Choice Scarf Chi-Yu, which is really good paired next to Koraidon, as well as Rock Ogerpon and Indeedee. The idea is that Koraidon plus Lunala just have so much explosive damage, and these Pokemon next to them also can do a lot to common restricted Pokemon. As always, I'll do a quick breakdown of the team, but if you want to just skip to the battles, check out the timestamps down below, and thanks so much as always for joining me. If you enjoy, I'd really appreciate it if you consider leaving a like in the video or subscribing to the channel. It really helps out a ton, and it feels really good to be back. I can't wait to dive into this format with all of you, so let's get started. If you're interested in trying out the team, the rental code is on the screen, and there's also an accompanying Pokepaste down in the description below. This team features a lot of strong combinations, such as Indeedee plus Lunala, Koraidon plus Flutter Mane, and Koraidon plus Chi-Yu. Life Orb Koraidon is one of the most powerful restricted Pokemon in the format and can deal massive amounts of damage to basically everything, and Lunala is insanely powerful while also having an incredible ability in Shadow Shield. If you're able to get a +1 boost on it via the Meteor Beam and then go for Helping Hand Expanding Forces, it can really take care of so many teams really easily. Lunala and Koraidon also synergize quite nicely because Lunala generally doesn't like going up against Steel-type Pokemon because it resists, of course, Meteor Beam as well as Expanding Force, but Koraidon deals with those Steel types really, really effectively. And so both of these are just really heavy damage dealers and can very quickly win you games. Breaking down the team, the first thing that I want to highlight is that I think Lunala Koraidon is a interesting restricted duo because it matches up really well into Calyrex Shadow Rider plus Zamazenta in my opinion. You still have to play well against the duo, but Calyrex plus Zama is one of the most common, if not the most common restricted duo in the early metagame. It's really fast paced, it's really oppressive, but Lunala and Koraidon threaten with a ton of damage, and the rest of the team really rounds things out, right? Like Calyrex Shadow Rider really struggles against Indeedee and normal Terra Flutter Mane, as well as Choice Scarf Chi-Yu. Zamazenta and Calyrex really don't like going up against Chi-Yu as well. So part of the reason why I wanted to feature this team early on is because I think this will be a pretty good anti-meta team in the sense that it'll be one of the most common, if not the most common restricted duo to start this format with. Now, Lunala is a really powerful restricted Pokemon, and it feels so fitting that Lunala really got its time to shine towards the end of Regulation G, after no one was really talking about it for the first couple of months of Reg G. Let's not forget that Lunala won the World Championships in 2019 and got second in 2022, the last time we had dual restricted formats. It is a really flexible Pokemon that gets access to an incredible ability in Shadow Shield, and there's a lot of different ways that you can run it. This Lunala is going to be the Power Herb Meteor Beam set, similar to what you may have seen towards the end of Regulation G, but of course you can consider Calm Mind plus Moonblast. You can also consider Trick Room and Wide Guard as supportive moves. The Lunala here is going to be Timid 204 Speed EV, so you always outpace Max Speed Kyogre, which is a really, really nice benchmark to hit, and the main idea behind it often is to get that +1 boost with Meteor Beam, then just spam Expanding Force. Water Terra, really, really good defensive Terra, and helps out against so many different common Pokemon and strategies. This Lunala, of course, is best paired with Indeedee. This Indeedee is going to be max HP, max defense, Rocky Helmet, also with Water Terra. And the main thing I want to call out here with Indeedee is that you've got Shadow Ball rather than a Psychic or Fairy type attack. Shadow Ball just allows you to hit Calyrex Shadow Rider and actually threaten it with damage. And it's really nice because Indeedee actually walls Calyrex really well, where Astral Barrage, you just absolutely do nothing into Indeedee, and Psychic type attacks don't do a ton into Indeedee either. So Shadow Ball just threatens a lot of damage onto Calyrex, which is awesome. Indeedee's general role will be protecting its partners with Follow Me, as well as Helping Hand to give Lunala the extra damage that it needs to just get knockouts with Expanding Force after you get a +1 boost. But Trick Room is a move that I actually find myself clicking a decent bit with Indeedee as well. For example, Indeedee Lunala can set up Trick Room against really fast-paced combos like Miraidon as well as Koraidon or Calyrex Shadow Rider. You, of course, also have your own speed here with Flutter Mane and Koraidon. This is the duel that is very similar to the duel that won EU IC, of course on Wolf Glick's Koraidon team, and Life Orb Koraidon just hits for so much damage. This is going to be Admin Koraidon, by the way, rather than Jolly, so you obviously do a ton of damage, but the main thing to note is that you will be slower than Max Speed Koraidon and Max Speed Miraidon, so just be careful about that. But, of course, you have Flutter Mane for Icy Wind, and this is going to be Max Speed Flutter Mane. Normal Terra, which is really good into the Calyrex Shadow Rider matchup. So Lunala, Indeedee, one of the main combos on this team, and then Flutter Mane Koraidon, also one of the main combos with this team, where you can just threaten with Icy Wind into Flare Blitz or Close Combat immediately. It's really hard to trade positively against this duel because it'll often knock out one Pokemon before you even get the chance to move. Another good partner for the Koraidon here is going to be the Chi-Yu. Choice Scarf Chi-Yu, really, really good into some of the most common Pokemon in the format, right? Like I just talked about Zamazenta and Calyrex Shadow Rider. Well, Chi-Yu threatens a one-hit knockout onto both of those, right? And so, of course, you can Terra one of them to get around the hit, but if you conserve your Chi-Yu into the end game, Chi-Yu often will be able to just clean up, and it's really, really good into some of the most popular picks in the format right now. Of course, Lunala is also common, and having Chi-Yu threaten Lunala with Snarl or Dark Pulse is really nice. This is going to be Fire Terra Chi-Yu rather than something like Ghost Terra, and the idea behind Fire Terra is you just maximize your damage output, right? So one way you can play with this team is lead Koraidon Chi-Yu, set up the Sun for Chi-Yu, immediately switch Koraidon out into Indeedee on turn 1 to set up Psychic Terrain, blocking any fake outs on a Chi-Yu, Fire Terra with Chi-Yu, and just start launching Heat Waves left and right. Especially against teams that have fake out, if you're able to catch your opponent off guard with this, you can often just like win the game on turn 1 because you get so much damage off while your opponent doesn't accomplish anything because they faked out into Psychic Terrain. So that's one of my favorite combos with this team. The final Pokemon is Rock Ogerpon. This Pokemon doesn't really need much of an introduction. It's very standard, but it's so good in restricted formats, right? Because you've got Sturdy, so you can take a big attack, you're really fast, you pressure with a lot of damage, and you also have redirection with Follow Me as well. So Ogerpon in particular, really valuable into restricteds that only have single target attacks to protect your restricteds, right? So you can bring this against, for example, to protect Pokemon from like Zamazenta or Zacian, and Ogerpon also just is really good offensively into, of course, Pokemon that are water type, which otherwise can be a little bit annoying for this team, right? So you want to bring this out into matchups against Pokemon like Kyogre as well as Water Urshifu. It's good into Tornadus as well, and so it's just a really solid offensive option, and Follow Me is obviously a really nice defensive option as well. So yeah, I think in terms of ways to play with the team, Lunala, Indeedee, really great lead. This is a lead that I think you want to go for if you are already going to be naturally faster with Lunala and your opponent doesn't have like the best speed control, or their only speed control is like Tailwind, because then you can threaten Trick Room with Indeedee. Otherwise, you can consider leads like Flutter, Koraidon. This is just really fast paced and oppressive immediately, and you pressure Icy Wind into damage from Koraidon to get knockouts. Koraidon Chi-Yu is really explosive, right? You set up the Sun for Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu just threatens with a lot of damage. Flutter main Chi-Yu, of course, kind of a classic lead as well. I think this is not as strong as maybe like some of the booster energy Flutter main sets, but of course, like this just puts on a lot of offensive pressure immediately, and you are still going to be really fast even without booster energy like activating on Flutter main, since you don't have the booster here. But this is one other lead combo. And then you can weave in Ogerpon as a lead as well, right? Like Ogerpon Koraidon allows you to go for Follow Me, Fire Terra Flame Charge to get a speed boost. That's really nice. Ogerpon Lunala is an option as well if you wanted, for example, something to threaten with damage with Ogerpon while Lunala also threatens with Meteor Beam. And so a lot of different ways that you can play with it, but those are some combos to think about. In terms of weaknesses to call out, first of all, I want to point out that nothing on this team resists ground type damage, and so ground Pokemon can be really scary. I think Groudon's a really good example where it can tank an attacks from the team, and Precipice Blade just does so much damage in return, so you have to be extra careful about ground type Pokemon. You also have to be careful because this team is not bulky. You do have Shadow Shield on Lunala and Indeedee, plus like Fluttermane and Ogerpon have Focus Sash and Sturdy, and so you will be able to survive, right? But the idea is that these Pokemon can get knocked out fairly quickly, so you do have to be very careful, because if you are trading negatively, and what I mean by that is like maybe you do 75% to a Pokemon, but then they knock you out in return, that actually often isn't worth it. So that's one thing to watch out for. Trick Room can be really scary for this team because you are relatively fast, and so a really well-played like Calyrex Ice Rider team that sets up Trick Room can be really oppressive, so that's something to watch out for. I think how you commit your Terra usage is also important. For example, against those Ice Rider teams, I've had games where I Terra Lunala, but then Koraidon can't Terra, and it's just a complete liability against Ice Rider in Trick Room, so that's something that you'll want to watch out for as well. Taunt is going to be really annoying for this Indeedee in particular because it just shuts it down completely. This team doesn't have very many good options to switch out defensively because you have almost no bulk to work with. Lunala is like the one Pokemon that you can often switch into, or Indeedee if you're like it's not out on the field, but it doesn't feel great to switch in Lunala because Shadow Shield often ends up getting broken, and that doesn't feel incredible, right? So you have to be very careful, because I think if you're put in a tough lead position, it's often hard to get out of it because there aren't that many easy ways to switch out without, you know, breaking your Shadow Shield or losing your Sash or breaking your Sturdy, for example. Otherwise, you have to be careful about opposing weather as well, right? So for example, a Tornadus that has access to Rain Dance can be really scary because it can be annoying for Koraidon. Lunala doesn't love going up against dark type Pokemon naturally, especially because you don't have Moonblast here, and Snarl is actually a really disruptive move against it as well, because a Lunala that's at neutral versus a Lunala at +1 feels just completely different, and so that's something you should watch out for as well. But those are just a couple of things that I wanted to note in terms of weaknesses. Okay, we've got Calyrex Zamazenta here. Clefairy, Incineroar, Urshifu, Raging Bolt. I played a couple of games with this team to get acclimated with it, and Clefairy is actually really annoying because we rely on a good bit of like single target damage from Pokemon like Fluttermane and Koraidon as well as Ogerpon. Chi-Yu feels really important here. It's probably going to be something like Dragon Terra on Zama, but I like Chi-Yu. Normal Terra Flutter is good. Koraidon, Lunala. Like, then the question is there an argument to bring Indeedee or Ogerpon? Indeedee, the answer is definitely yes. Shadow Ball pressure. The thing is, it just doesn't really do much damage. You have to be very careful when you have this out against Clefairy, because it just, like, yeah, is in this awkward trade-off. And then I also have to respect Incineroar lead, right? I definitely have to respect Incineroar lead. Incineroar lead's actually an argument for leading Indeedee to block Fake Out immediately. Like, I think it could be Koraidon Indeedee. I'm also thinking Koraidon Chi-Yu, switch in Indeedee turn 1, Lunala. Koraidon Chi-Yu is just so oppressive in terms of damage here, so I'm gonna go with that. But yeah, I think if Incineroar is led, like one thing we can do is just Fire Terra turn 1, switch in Indeedee, and close combat to KO Incin. And then Indeedee can even think about setting up Trick Room from there, because Calyrex is going to be obviously fairly speedy. It's going to be Zama plus Incin. Okay, works for me. I think I'm just going to hard switch into Indeedee here to block Fake Out, and then go for close combat into Incin. Like, Incin's actually the Pokemon I want to get rid of here, because it's fairly bulky. Now, you could Ghost Terra the Incin here, but I feel like Zama's more likely to Terra. So, I'm going to close combat you, switch in Indeedee. That's one of the really strong things about this team, which is that you can lead Koraidon plus Chi-Yu, and then you can switch either slot into Indeedee, right? Like, another play I could make here is switch Koraidon out into Indeedee, Fire Terra, and just start clicking Heat Wave. The problem with that is I'd still be Heat Waving into two things that resist it, right? So, if I get the knockout onto Incineroar, this is totally a worthy trade of damage. Here's the Terra. So, my main question is it Zama or Incin? Because I think Zama Terraing makes more sense. Beautiful. Into Dragon Terra. That's totally fine. Okay, great. This is where back Fluttermane would have been nice. But then it means I'd have to give up one of Indeedee or Chi-Yu, right? Cool. We get close combat off, and that's a one-hit knockout. Nice. The question is, did they just body press into Koraidon? Because that could be the case, and with the defense drop, I might just feint to a body press, which is a little bit scary. Ooh, Iron Defense. Now, this actually is fine for us, because Iron Defense is going to be pretty useless. Like, Lunala should just wall the Zamazenta at this point, right? So my goal should be to just target around Zamazenta from this point onwards. They're going to bring out Calyrex. Okay. Obviously need to respect Astral Barrage from that. Kind of a Chi-Yu waiting room. And I do have Shadow Ball as well. And we know this has Iron Defense. I think here I could probably go Protect and Shadow Ball. Since you've revealed Iron Defense, like, my approach towards trying to win this game is to just ignore the Zama and, like, not Terra Lunala and use Lunala in the late game against it. I'm also not sure if Protect is necessary here, because I'm going to feint the following turn anyway, and actually feinting gives me a free switch in. But I'll Flame Charge here in case they, like, Protect this and then Body Press into Indeedee. Shadow Ball. Oh, they just Draining Kiss us. Okay. And they end up taking more damage from that thanks to Rocky Helmet. So Flame Charge isn't going to do much damage, but it'll give me a speed boost. Like I said, this was to cover for Protect plus Body Press. I'm curious if they Body Press Indeedee here. Does this KO us? It does. Okay. But now I have the speed boost on the Koraidon, which is really nice, right? So I could go out into Chi, or I can go out into Lunala. I think we just go out into Lunala here. And now I pressure Fire, Terra, Flare Blitz. Calyrex could protect right now, though, I suppose. So I'm actually going to go for protect here, plus Meteor Beam, because I know that you don't have the Life Orb on Calyrex, and you're a Draining Kiss set. Okay, they just Astral Barrage. That's fine, though. Would have liked to see a protect there for sure. Yeah, but I survive. Yep, body press into us. So in that position, like the play I was thinking of is just go Fire, Terra, Flare Blitz, KO Calyrex, right? But Calyrex obviously could protect in that situation, which is scary. I could have brought Chiyu out first as well, but then Chiyu basically might launch an attack into Calyrex. Calyrex protects, and then body press just KOs Chiyu, which isn't ideal. A ton of damage there. Nice. Now I think I can send it Fire, Terra, Flare Blitz into you. And Moongeist Beam into you to cover for wide guard. So the two questions this turn are, does Calyrex protect, and does Zamazenta heavy slam into our Lunala? I also wonder if Zama has wide guard, because you might be Iron Defense, body press, heavy slam, protect. They're not going to protect Calyrex, okay. Yeah, I was surprised they didn't protect last turn, honestly, but they may just be expecting to survive this because they intimidated us. However, we have Life Orb, so Life Orb plus Fire Terra is more than enough to get that knockout. Great. Okay, they body press us, but that's fine. I knock out Zama, and now it's a 2v1. The main question I have is now, what is your final Pokemon? But I think no matter what it is, Lunala plus Chiyu should be able to handle it. Perfect. So I think turn 1 was really huge, like getting an immediate knockout in this game. And it showed off one of, I think, my favorite combos on this team, which is switching in NDD on turn 1 to block Fake Out. But yeah, I think the mid game there, it's like I was like a Calyrex protect there could have made things a little bit more awkward for us, right? It's gonna be Urshifu as their last one, and it's Water Urshifu. Okay, Water Urshifu is perfect, right? The only scary thing here is I could theoretically miss my moves. Sun is up, but it's about to expire. Yeah, I think the question I have is, do I click Overheat, Heat Wave, or Dark Pulse? I think I'm going to opt for Overheat right now, especially since the sun is still up. But they do detect. Yeah, that's the right play. My main question is whether or not 2 Overheats knocks out the Urshifu. Although I think Lunala also... Now you're not Choice Scarf for Urshifu. Like, do you even outspeed the Lunala? No, right? Let's see. I mean, it's a speed tie in the sense that they have the same base speed. But if you're Admin Urshifu, I should just outpace you with Lunala here. Overheat also, yeah, another one will KO. Cool. Yeah, you're all faster with Lunala. Cool. Okay, nice. But yeah, if they were Choice Scarf Urshifu there, they like couldn't click an attack with the sun up, Overheat just one-shots Urshifu, which is kind of nuts, right? But the main thing in this game is we were able to get a quick knockout immediately. I'm curious about the Calyrex set. Like, to not see a protect either turn is kind of surprising, but like I said, they may have not just anticipated like the burst damage, and they may have been like, oh, I've intimidated you. You're not actually going to knock me out since I'm really bulky. That may have been the case, but with Fire, Terra, Flare Blitz, we were able to just secure that knockout, which was really nice. I also wonder how the game would have played out if they had gotten for a target onto Lunala with the Zamazenta at any point, but that's the thing, right? Like, does it even have something like Heavy Slam or Behemoth Bash? If not, then we just completely wall it if you're like Iron Defense, Body Press, and Wide Guard. And so that's why I wasn't super worried about Iron Defense, because even though we are primarily well, I would say primarily physical with the lead in Koraidon. Like, we have a lot of special attackers in Chiyu and Lunala. And Lunala in particular, like Ghost typing in general, is just a huge, huge problem for Zama. I would guess they had Heavy Slam, because I don't know. I feel like being walled by Fluttermane then feels really, really bad, but we never got to see that final move. Koraidon Zamazenta for this one. Urshifu, Ogerpon, Fluttermane, Raging Bolt. All right. Koraidon Zama. So, I think Shiyu, no, she was okay, but then the problem, I think like Flutter we probably want for speed control. I'm a little bit worried about Raging Bolt here, to be honest. Especially if it has Snarl. Water Terra Lunala, I think, should be really good. If I'm my opponent, I'm going Bolt, Koraidon, Zama, and a fourth. Flutter or Ogre. We're max speed Flutter, so I think that's a pretty good pick. Like, I might just go Flutter, Koraidon here. Lunala, Indeedee. I really like Indeedee here because their restricteds are both physical attackers, and they both are single target attackers as well. So an Indeedee Follow Me is really good because it just redirects a strong attack away, and that strong attack, there's also a chance Indeedee just won't get one shot by it, right? Dark Urshifu and Zacian. Okay. I am okay with this. This feels like I can just Icy Wind, Fire, Terra, Flame Charge turn 1. I am mainly worried about probably an immediate Sucker Punch coming out from the Urshifu. But I think Icy Wind, Fire, Terra, Flame Charge, Urshifu is what I want to go for here. My only concern is this doesn't knock out the Urshifu. But I really value getting that speed boost to make sure I can outpace Koraidon in the back from my opponent's end. I also think if you're my opponent right now, you should be scared about Zamazenta just getting absolutely demolished by Koraidon. So a Zama Protector Terra makes sense to me. Maybe Water Terra. They're not terroring, or they're slower. Slower Zama would be really interesting because I feel like one of Zama's selling points is its speed. Okay, they just Sucker Punch. They didn't Terra Zama, which I guess is frustrating because I totally could have just knocked it out here. But I actually think this trade is also fine. Like, if I knock out Urshifu and Zacian is targeting Fluttermane with the double up, I think that's totally okay. But yeah, I would have, like, surprised to see my opponent just take the risk there with Zamazenta, right? But we do knock out Urshifu. Okay. And I don't mind prioritizing Urshifu here because that's actually the biggest threat to Lunala in the back. Oh, they just play rough. Okay, great. Nice. They bring out Fluttermane. Yeah, my main question now is whether or not that Fluttermane's also max speed. Got Lunala, Indeedee in the back. This can Icy Wind. I've got Shadow Ball. I can Icy Wind. I think here I'm okay double protecting to bait out Terra or protect from their sides. And there's the Terra. Cool. Yeah, this is what I expected on turn 1 of the game, honestly. Terra Water Zama is my guess. Maybe Terra Ground. Yeah. That's fine by me. The Terra Ground does not save you from Flare Blitz. So next turn, I have available to me Icy Wind plus Flare Blitz, right? And then Indeedee plus Lunala should be really good because of Follow Me into Expanding Force in this endgame. They actually just Dazzling Gleam. Okay. That's fine. And then Terra Blast, I assume. Yep. Terra Blast, play rough, Behemoth Blade, protect. It's normally going to be the moveset you see. +1 speed, Photosynthesis, Photosynthesis. So the play I'm leaning towards is Icy Wind here, and just Flare Blitz into Zacian. Obviously, Zacian could protect now, but Flutter's not going to knock us out. My worst case scenario here is Zacian protects, Fluttermane wins the speed tie, and Icy wins us, dropping us back down to neutral speed. But then I can just bring out Indeedee and then just go Follow Me Flare Blitz. So that's part of the reason why I really valued bringing Indeedee into this matchup. Okay, Zacian does go for the protect, so nice play. Meant I could have just Flare Blitz last turn, but I am fine forcing the protect out here. I could have read Intellect and gone Icy Wind Flame Charge, but knowing that they are Ground Terra Blast means that my Koraidon is actually threatened by a knockout, whereas like Play Rough and Behemoth Blade we'd resist, right? So I assume they'll probably Icy Wind in return. Yep. Oh, we actually survive. Okay, cool. Nice. So we're -1, you're -1, you're -1. We're neutral here. Yeah, it's still just a question of whether or not it's a speed tie. That's what I'm worried about. It actually is making me think I should respect that it might be. But basically, like, I'm thinking I could just Icy Wind Flare Blitz here, right? Alternatively, I could protect, sack Flutter Mane, like protect Shadow Ball is the other play I'm thinking about right now. Koraidon will be their last one. It's just like you can feel the win in front of me with Icy Wind Flare Blitz here. Ooh, I like that play a lot. They hard switch Zacian. Okay. I think that's really smart. That's a really great play. Flutter speed even more. That's really smart. In my head, I was like, look, if Zacian stays in here and I get the knockout, then I should win the game with Indy Lunala. It still should be okay here, but let's see. Oh my gosh, we still just demolished Koraidon there. I assume they're going to Icy Wind into us. So we take a lot of recoil. It could just be Dazzling Gleam as well, honestly. Oh, it's actually Shadow Ball. Interesting. Shadow Ball, Gleam, Icy Wind. This is fine with me, because now I get a free switch into... I think we go Lunala, because I can just protect with Lunala. If I go Indeedee, I have Follow Me. Yeah, I like Lunala more right now. But I think my opponents played really nicely. Like, they went for this, like, bait, right? Where it's like Zacian didn't attack, and they just went for Ground Terra, and I could have just, like, Fire Terra Flare Blitz, and I launched 2 attacks into that slot, and now they've, like, conserved what is probably the biggest threat. But it's the last turn of Sunlight, and this is at -2 speed. I'm at -1 here, so I think I'm happy just clicking Shadow Ball. I actually think I'm okay clicking Icy Wind here into Protect. Because Flutter Mane could protect here, right? Icy Wind protect. I give up Flutter Mane. I get a free switch into Indeedee, and then I think Indeedee Lunala closes up the game for us. Yep, they just Behemoth Blade, but that's fine. Okay. This is exactly why I wanted to conserve Indeedee all the way until the end, though, right? Shadow Ball into us. Great. Sunlight fades. No more photosynthesis. There's going to be booster energy, though, unsurprisingly. But they get the special attack boost, which means Lunala should outpace it, which is really important here. Because with Lunala outpacing, pretty sure I can just go a Helping Hand here into Expanding Force. With Shadow Shield, I should always take an attack from Zacian, right? The alternative was Follow Me Moongeist Beam, but I was worried that Flutter Mane protects in that scenario, and I don't get any damage off this turn while taking way too much damage with Indeedee. I guess the only concern with Helping Hand Expanding Force here is it still doesn't knock out Flutter Mane. Like, I feel like I was conditioned to think Flutter Mane here is not going to take it, because you don't have a ton of bulk on these Flutters, right? They're normally like Glass Cannons with Focus Sash. But maybe I'm putting a little bit too much stock into Lunala here. Yeah, maybe it should have just been Follow Me plus Moongeist, but we'll see. Helping Hand, Psychic Terrain boosted. There's Behemoth Blade, yep. We tank that. Cool. And actually, because they Behemoth Bladed into the NDD, even if you were to Shadow Ball here, it's fine. But yeah, okay, that's a double KO. Crits the Zacian, but, you know, even if we didn't get the KO there, the next turn I just go follow me Expanding Force. So, yeah. I think this was a really interesting one since we both had like fairly fast Pokemon, but I feel like I generally had the advantage from the lead, which was really big, and it was partially because getting that first speed boost onto Koraidon meant that I very much was putting on like offensive pressure speed-wise. But in the mid game, I think my opponent did a really good job baiting a lot of attacks away from the Zacian, where yeah, I felt like I needed to respect it. To their credit, they didn't Terra. They were just attacking in front of a Koraidon for 2 turns, and then they switched up their playstyle, and we're like, okay, now I'm going to slow it down and play defensive. So I was trying to capitalize on the fact that they were playing really aggressive early on, and that was really smart of them. But in the end, I think we just kind of had the numbers advantage after getting that knockout onto Urshifu. And by getting rid of Urshifu, it meant getting rid of the hardest Pokemon to deal with for Lunala, right? And then Lunala was just really strong in this end game. And yeah, getting those speed drops onto Flutter so we could just helping hand Expanding Force was great too. Kyogre, Zamazenta, Chien-Pao, Rillaboom, Entei, Tornadus. 4 of the 6 same Pokemon that got top 4 of the World Championships in the previous regulation in 2024. In Zama, Chien-Pao, Entei, Rilla. I brought all of those to Worlds, so I have a lot of love for them. The main thing is Tornogre here, right? Tornogre. Zama, this is actually really scary, I think, because like normally Zama's threatened by fire type damage. I can't rely into that nearly as much into this comp. Huh. Like into Kyogre, I normally like Indeedee, Lunala, Ogerpon, Koraidon. I think the problem here is Zama can be led so freely. I can't punish it that much. Yeah. I mean, naturally, Koraidon doesn't love going up against rain. The upside is that Zama threatens... or Lunala threatens Zama a good bit. One of my 3 losses at the World Championships was actually to a Lunala team, and Lunala was really uncommon at Worlds. But the problem is that, like, Zamazenta just can't really hit Lunala, right? So we have that going for us. And I think Water Terra should be very valuable from a defensive standpoint as well. But it's going to be Tornogre to start. Okay. So, yeah, we have the Water Terra. Normally it's going to be something like Tailwind Water Spout here. I could even switch in Koraidon immediately. But they could also just, like, Rain Dance, expecting Koraidon to come in. So part of the question here is, do we think they just Tailwind? Right? Because, like, the play I'm actually angling towards is Protect, Lunala, Water Terra, Trick Room turn 1. But I'm worried this is Specs Kyogre. The reason I'm protecting here is because they could also go Bleak Wind, Water Spout, right? It's a really tricky turn 1, like, because they could just... if I were them, I actually would be clicking Rain Dance, maybe. This is where having Wide Guard would have been really nice, too. But I'm going to go Protect, Water, Terra, Trick Room, I think. Okay. So we're hoping to see Tailwind, Water Spout here. Uh-oh. This is going to be a Terra. If it's Terra, Water, Kyogre, I really may just get blown up here on turn 1. Oh, man. Yeah, I think that's what's happening here. I'm curious if they ended up... like, because I obviously could have switched in Koraidon here on turn 1. That may have been the move, honestly. I also could have Terra'd Lunala. But Terra Water is very bad for us here. Okay, they did Tailwind, so that's what I was hoping for. The question, though, is does Indeedee even survive this, even with Water Terra? The way around this, by the way, would have been Koraidon switch in and then Trick Room. But I'm not confident Indeedee survives this, honestly. Yeah, that is like the pressure of what's likely a choice specs for Mystic Water Kyogre. It's just way too many multipliers on top. I'm not sure we can really come back from that, honestly. Yeah, kudos to my opponent for going for that in front of a Lunala that would threaten with wide guard. Like, I think, like, I was thinking about leading Ogre Pawn. I just didn't love that into Zamazenta. This would have given Zama a good bit of trouble. I would have been able to, like, Trick Room Meteor Beam, for example. But Water Terra is the, like, extra cherry on top. Without Water Terra, we're actually fine in this one, I think. But it allows for a knockout just immediately like that. So the problem is now with Tailwind set up. Yeah, I mean, you just get to Water Spout everything for free. It's really bad. I like... trying to figure out how I can even win. They should have Rain Dance is the thing too, right? Okay, I'm gonna bring out Ogre Pawn. Like, the path I see here, it's just I'm too far behind. I, like, lost my Terra for that as well. So I'm gonna, like, Meteor Beam Heart Switch to Koraidon. But basically, like, on turn 1, a lot of Kyogres, even on these... offensive like Tornadus teams will still have like a defensive Terra like Grass, but the Water Terra is the extra like multiplier you need to knock out the entity even with my defensive Terra. So the play would have been switching Koraidon Trick Room, but there's a lot that could go wrong there, which is just like Rain Dance instead of Tailwind on turn 1. And Bleak Wind double connects, unfortunately, as well. So what I was hoping for here is like you miss Koraidon, we survive the Water Spout, I knock out Tornadus, but like I said, I think I'm just way too far behind immediately. I don't even know if they had Rain Dance in the end, but I would assume so. It would just be wild not to run Rain Dance. It's such a good tool. So, yeah. This one was tough. What would I do differently in this matchup? I would consider leading Ogre Pawn, especially given that it did end up being Water Terra Kyogre, because Ogre Pawn pressures with Ivy Cudgel or Power Whip immediately. Right? So something like Ogre Pawn Lunala is a better lead. But yeah, Indeedee just unfortunately getting one shot even with the defensive Terra means it is not as strong here. But I think Choice Specs Kyogre is like truly one of the best Pokemon you can use on the ladder. It is so powerful. Now you just Water Spout again and Body Press, right? Yeah, I'm not surviving that. Torn Ogre Zama plus a 4th. I don't even know what the 4th was against Water Terra. I think it's just lead Ogre Pawn. It's like, but I think like Kyogre plus Tornadus is really tricky for Koraidon in the sense that you have to always respect Rain Dance, right? And not knowing the item on Kyogre is what makes it trickier as well. So the Body Press here. Because it's like, if we get Trick Room up on turn 1, I actually am in a very good spot because I just outpace you and like overwhelm you under Trick Room. The other question is, what about the Pokemon I didn't bring in this matchup? I don't really like Flutter Mane that much. I don't think it contributes enough. So I think that's an easy drop. And then the other Pokemon would be Chi-Yu, which we never bring either. So I think the Pokemon we picked was right, but it's like how we play it. But yeah, I think if I were to play it differently, it's probably an Ogre Pawn Lunala lead, Koraidon Indeedee in the back. And then at least we threaten with Power Whip. But yeah, I think Kyogre is a really volatile matchup in closed team sheet environment because we don't know the item on Kyogre, right? Is it Scarf? Scarf would actually be really annoying as well. But yeah, I think this is one of those games where I was like, I really wish I had Wide Guard on Lunala. Wide Guard is so good in shutting down Kyogre. If we had Wide Guard, we can just Wide Guard Trick Room turn 1 and then play the game from there. But without Wide Guard and the threat of Rain Dance, it's just really tough for us. But yeah, the solution, given the situation I was put in this game, was switching Koraidon turn 1 and Water Terra Indeedee. But then, like I said, because they didn't really need to Tailwind, to be honest. But I guess the upside of Tailwinding is you outspeed Lunala, because otherwise Lunala could get an attack off against you. So since, yeah, like I basically would have had to make a read immediately, but it's a good example of how like Specs Kyogre can just win the game on one turn because I just lost way too many resources, right? And with Tailwind going up, I can't overwhelm my opponent with speed either. So yeah, like I said, the solution would be probably Ogre Pawn Lunala, or it would have been the same lead I went with and then just hard switching Koraidon turn 1 and then set up Trick Room. That's what I would do differently. Koraidon, Calyrex, Chi-Yu, Ogre Pawn, Whimsicott, Indeedee. We have very similar teams, but they have Calyrex over Lunala and Whimsicott over the Flutter Mane. I think Flutter Mane is probably going to be very important for us here. I also think Trick Room is one possible approach we can take with NDD. Like, I think we could go Flutter Koraidon. I'm worried that they go Whimsicott, but I guess with Focus Sash on Flutter, it's actually not bad. So I'm thinking Flutter Koraidon, NDD, Lunala. Chiyu's good, but it's not amazing into Koraidon, into their Chiyu, or into Rock Ogre Pawn. Like, I think I could lead NDD, but then it'd probably be NDD Lunala, which is really Snarl weak from Chiyu. So if they go with Whimsicott, like, the thing is, Whimsicott itself won't be a huge damage dealer. It does start in Koraidon, obviously. But, yeah, I think, there's a couple of different approaches I could take if I see Whimsicott lead. One is to just, like, start Icy Wind and Flame Charging and just keep boosting and dropping their speeds. Chiyu Calyrex. Okay, I don't mind that. I pressure with Shadow Ball. I pressure with Close Combat. I pressure with Icy Wind Flare Blitz. Icy Wind Flame Charge. We definitely have the better lead here, I think. But the question is, how do they respond defensively, right? Could be NDD switch in, Expanding Force. You could protect this. This theoretically could be Covert Cloak. Could be Water Terra. I'm leaning towards Fire Terra, Flare Blitz here, and Icy Wind. Chiyu is, like, threatening here, right? But it won't KO either Pokemon, which is the main important piece. Okay, Calyrex switches into NDD. That makes sense. That obviously would allow it to take a Shadow Ball. We'll knock out NDD here, though, which is a big deal, right? I'm mainly worried that Chiyu... Oh, they Terra. Okay. Ghost Terra, maybe? This is huge for us if it's Ghost Terra. Nice. The reason why this is huge is because I didn't go for a target onto that slot anyway, so now you've committed your Terra, now you have two things that are weak to Shadow Ball from Flutter Mane. The other question I have now is whether or not you are Focus Sashed on Calyrex, and if Whimsicott's in the back. But confirming Choice Scarf on Chiyu here is great, and also seeing it lock into Ghost Terra is also great. But I think that this is actually a really nice defensive play by my opponent. I think it makes a lot of sense. Although I think, yeah, it's actually better to just Fire Terra Flare Blitz Chiyu rather than Close Combat, even without Terra, because you still knock it out. So that's one play I could have gone for here, but wanted to put on pressure against a potential Terra Calyrex turn 1. So we knock out NDD. The problem is I'm going to take a lot of recoil from this. The scary thing is if Heat Wave just KOs us after all this. But I don't think it should. Okay, beautiful. Alright, that's great. What do they bring out? Calyrex, perfect. Okay. Yeah, my main question is whether or not it's Focus Sash Calyrex. I should be able to just Flare Blitz into you here. Shadow Ball into you. I'm thinking about Flame Charge instead. That probably KOs Chiyu, right? Koraidon should be their last one. Yeah, I'm down for Flame Charge. Shadow Ball. Okay, they don't protect. Nice. No Focus Sash. I don't know if I love how I'm trying to think how I could have played around Focus Sash. I just figured if they had Sash, they might have considered staying in on turn 1, which is why I went for the aggressive Icy Wind Flare Blitz double up on a Calyrex. But yeah, this was really fast-paced. But Koraidon should be their last one. We just Moonblast that easily. Cool. Yeah, if it were Focus Sash, it would have been a very different game, right? I could have gone Icy Wind again, but then Heat Wave would get a double KO. Calyrex would obviously protect in that position. We had NDD Lunala in the back, which probably folds too. Indeedee Lunala would have full to Calyrex Chi-Yu, honestly, because you just Astral Barrage with Beads of Ruin. So if we were Focus Sash Calyrex, then I would have lost, I think. But also, the way I was thinking about it is if we were Focus Sash Calyrex, I think they would be more inclined to, like, stay in on turn 1 of the battle as well. But yeah, I do think Sash Calyrex positioned correctly is really scary, especially because I did commit my Terra to to Koraidon rather than Fluttermane, which normally ends up being a pretty important Terra in the Calyrex Shadow Rider matchup. I guess, though, if I lost both Pokemon to Sash Calyrex, I would have had Indeedee plus Lunala, and the way I would actually play the game from there is actually simply just protect the Lunala and Trick Room with Indeedee. The question is, can Indeedee survive a Heat Wave in Sun, assuming they continue to click Heat Wave with Chi-Yu plus, like, an Expanding Force from Calyrex? I'm not confident on that, since we're not very specially defensive, or, like, max HP, max defense. Because then if we get Trick Room up, Lunala just wins the game under Trick Room by clicking Expanding Force into everything. But then it would be a question of, yeah, like, do you get the knockout onto Indeedee? My guess is, honestly, I don't survive Expanding Force plus Heat Wave, so Sash Calyrex would have been super clutch for my opponent in that one, but fortunately for us, they didn't have it. Trying to think what else I could have done differently. Like, turn 1, I could have just gone Icy Wind, Flare Blitz into Chi-Yu. Given that they switched out, that would have been huge. The problem with that, though, is then they get a free switch in into the Indeedee plus Calyrex, so then you have Indeedee and Calyrex out next to each other. Then I would probably just go Icy Wind, Flare Blitz, knock out Indeedee, you Astral Barrage your Expanding Force, knock out Koraidon, bring Fluttermane down to 1 HP, but then I have Fluttermane at 1 HP into a Koraidon plus Calyrex Shadow Rider, and then I get a free switch in into Lunala as well. But then I guess if you didn't commit your Terra on Chi-Yu, it could get a little bit spookier. But yeah, them tearing Chi-Yu ended up being like a liability and meant they couldn't tear anything else. I think had they saved their Terra for Calyrex, it would have been scarier in this battle. Zamazenta Shadow Rider here with Urshifu, Incineroar, Tornadus, Rillaboom. This feels like definitely one of the main ways to start this format, with Shadow Rider and Zama being such a good duo. So I think the upside is that Koraidon Lunala has fairly good offense into this. The question is who to drop. Probably Rock Ogerpon. I think there's a Trick Room angle, potentially, from here with Indeedee, so we could even lead it. The thing is, I think Flutter is bringable as well, and I think the other thing I'm worried about is Rain Dance from Tornadus. So Tornadus lead plus Calyrex may be something to respect. Okay, I'm thinking Chi-Yu Koraidon here. Indeedee as a switch-in. Lunala as the 4th. The general logic here with Chi-Yu Koraidon is if you don't lead Tornadus, or if you don't have Rain Dance, Chi-Yu just does so much damage. If you lead Calyrex, you're going to be in a really awkward position against the Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu alone has a really good Zama and Calyrex matchup. And I actually don't mind Rain Dance. Tornadus Incineroar, interesting. Okay. This could be Fake Out Rain Dance turn 1, Fake Out Bleak Wind Storm, Fake Out Tailwind, Tailwind Parting Shot. Interesting. If it's these two, it's probably Calyrex Zama in the back, you would guess, right? Question is whether or not they have Rain Dance. I think if you have Rain Dance, you just go for it right now. But I'm actually thinking about going for Dark Pulse here into Tornadus. And switching in Indeedee. I don't want to click Overheat here in case they Rain Dance. Dark Pulse can't miss. It has a flinch chance. This also covers for them clicking Bleak Wind Storm. Covers for Fake Out. Beautiful. Nice. Perfect. Alright, I'm very happy about that turn 1 then. Oh, wow. It's Focus Sash Torn. Okay, so that means no Focus Sash on the Calyrex, which is actually a really big deal in my opinion. That's good to know. Obviously, you can Tailwind now, but if you Tailwind, I just Trick Room on you, which is great. Could switch out right now. Neither of these really want to eat up a Bleak Wind, though. I think I'm down to just Dark Pulse here and click Trick Room. Beautiful. And we bait them into tailwinding. Perfect. That's fantastic. We knock out Torn now. Ah, okay. They've got Taunt. That's a nice play. Of course, that will stop my Trick Room. Indeed, getting taunted is really not great for us. Now it's a free switch it into Zama for my opponent. With Zama, you can body press. Like, you can double up onto the Chi-Yu slot with body press knockoff. Yep. Okay. I could switch... I could double switch right now. Chi-Yu is really important, I think. So I mean, I could also Terra it. It's just if I'm my opponent, I would go body press and knockoff here, or body press parting shot. I could switch in Lunala, but then I'd be potentially eating up a knockoff, which doesn't feel great. I could sack Chi-Yu to get a free switch in. I think that's the other possibility. Okay, I'm leaning towards switching in Lunala here. Actually, double switching. A taunted Indeedee is actually one of the worst scenarios for this team, because it just means you don't do anything with Indeedee. So that was a really nice play by them. Taunt plus Rain Dance, or Taunt plus Tailwind. If instant parting shots here and it's body press into Lunala, then Lunala still has Shadow Shield active, which is really nice. But like I said, it might be body press knockoff double up into either slot. Okay, it is body press into Lunala. Nice. Ooh, a knockoff into Koraidon. That's probably the best case scenario for us. Okay, fantastic. So Lunala still has its Life Orb. Or, I mean, Power Herb. 2 turns of Tailwind left from their end. Either of these could Terra right now. I think you could obviously parting shot with this. Things are even faster than Koraidon is the question, right? Leaning towards Protect here and Close Combat into Incin. Zama protects, great. Nala protects. Nice. We do outspeed Incineroar, so we get Close Combat off, and that just KOs. Perfect. Yeah, that's the thing. I was like, you would have to have a good bit of speed investment on Incineroar to get a parting shot off before I move there, but they could have hard switched into Calyrex as well, so I thought about Close Combat plus Moongeist Beam to cover for the hard switch. I also would have covered for Terra, but then Moongeist Beam doesn't one-shot Incin, and then I'm at risk of eating up knockoff, which isn't great. Calyrex is out now. Last turn of Psychic Terrain. Probably don't need to really be clicking Expanding Force anyway with this, though, so it's fine. Chi-Yu is probably going to be really important in this endgame. I think here I can Water Terra. Moongeist Beam into... I actually think I'd probably like... Well, I just protected last turn, right? Yeah. Water Terra, Moongeist Beam, switch into Indeedee. This is only at risk if they body press Lunala and they have damage boosting to the Astral Barrage that's also coming my way. But then... Yeah, they're going to Terra here. Yep. Calyrex. Yep, makes sense. Terra Dark. Okay. So Chi-Yu with its fire type attack should be really good in this endgame, right? If you knock out Lunala here, I just get Chi-Yu in for free, and I can just start clicking Overheat with Follow Me pressure. It's part of, I think, what makes Chi-Yu really appealing in this metagame. Threatens Calyrex and Zama super nicely. Okay, they just Astral. Yep. tank that. Your Life Orb. It's Behemoth Bash, but that's fine. Water Terra allows us to tank that like a champ. Cool. So obviously this allows them to resist the Moongeist Beam, but that's totally okay with me. Yep. Tone Peter's out. No more terrain, which is fine. I think honestly I can just go for Meteor Beam here. 2 turns of Sunlight. Meteor Beam into Trick Room. I actually don't think we need to set up Trick Room, honestly. I think we'd Meteor Beam follow me here is fine, because I have Chiyu waiting in the back. Cool. It's just Psychic. Nice. So they were hoping to just go all in on Lunala there. But yeah, even if we fainted to Life Orb Astral plus Bash, like I just get a free switch in there anyway, right? Oh, the Zama is really slow. It's slower than Lunala. Outside of Tailwind, interesting. Okay. This should KO, right? Nice. Beautiful. Calyrex is down. And now we've got Chiyu just waiting in the back. So, yeah, the taunt on Instant was really nice, but I think reading Rain Dance turn 1 and Fake Out was really big. Gave me a lot of momentum. Body Press comes out. Doesn't even knock us out with max HP, max defense. Very nice. Now I can just Moongeist Beam plus Helping Hand. So we didn't even end up bringing out the Chiyu, which was a really good piece in this endgame. The main scary thing is the Chiyu endgame would have been reliant on hitting our fire-type attacks, specifically Overheat. I probably wouldn't want to click Heat Wave against Nizama. But the idea is, like, with Indeedee plus Chiyu, I can redirect attacks away from Chiyu, and then Overheat just, like, nukes both Calyrex and Zama, and with Choice Scarf, I outspeed both of them. So, yeah. I think Instant Tornadus, like, is a relatively passive lead. You're not going to do a ton of damage, and reading into turn 1, Fake Out Rain Dance, and basically just ignoring the Rain Dance and getting a ton of damage off was really big. And then the other turn that was really big in this game is, I think, when Incineroar just fainted to close combat. I think Instant there had the ability to maybe consider going for a defensive Terra to survive the turn, pivot out, and then you would survive and be able to bring out Calyrex afterwards, which could be a little bit scarier for us. But yeah, I think generally part of why I really like this duel is because in the early meta, Calyrex plus Zama is out everywhere, and I would say that this team has a pretty favorable matchup into that combo. Swordfish here. Okay, we have a familiar duo in Kyogre plus Zacian. This, of course, was an absolute menace the last time you could pair these two up. Of course, that was in a Dynamax format. But Kyogre plus Zacian here with Rain Dance support. I think, this is a really strong early meta team. So it's going to be Sash normally on Chien-Pao, maybe Rocky Helmet or Mentorb on a Moongus. Could be anything of like Mystic Water, Assault Vest, Scarf, Specs on Kyogre, Scarf Urshifu. Water Terra Lunala is going to be important. Ogerpon's going to be important. I mean, I don't like this matchup, honestly. It's really scary for Koraidon, in my opinion. There's a threat of Trick Room as well. I think because of a Moongus, we need Rock Ogerpon. So it's Rock Ogerpon, Koraidon, Lunala, and then one of Flutter Mane or Indeedee. Probably Indeedee for terrain. Torn Kyogre is probably one of the main leads to respect from their end. We are Water Terra with Indeedee, which I think is a big deal. I'm thinking Ogerpon, Lunala, Koraidon, Indeedee. Yeah. Chiyu just feels way too awkward to bring here with the threat of Tornadus and Kyogre. And, like, if they get Tailwind up, Chiyu just gets completely demolished. I can't protect. It's not easy to switch. So that's an easy one to drop, right? And then the other option would be Flutter Mane, which just doesn't feel like it does enough here. Tornadus, Zacian. Okay. I could follow me Meteor Beam turn 1 here. They could just Bleak win, but I would get... I wonder if they Tailwind. Could also protect switch in Indeedee right now. Our goal should be to get Trick Room up, ideally. Maybe leading Indeedee here actually would have been smart. Could also Spiky Shield switch in Indeedee. If I were them, I'd probably just Bleak Wind, like double up onto Ogre Pawn. So I think I'm actually going to Spiky Shield here. Meteor Beam. One protects. Nice play. Although this is fine if it ends up being Behemoth Bash. Or sorry, Behemoth Blade into Ogre Pawn. That works too. Okay. Fine by me. My question is whether or not a +1 Moongeist knocks out Zacian. If so, then it's actually totally worth it to go for right now. Okay. I would just Bleak Wind right now. Target Ogre Pawn down. I think I want to switch an Inity here. Moongeist Beam into Zacian. But I think, yeah, maybe I should have just led Inity here and pressure with Trick Room immediately. This is where I really wish we had Trick Room on Lunala over Protect. I think it's really important to conserve Ogre Pawn because it's one of our best Pokemon into Kyogre and basically forces a Terra out of it. They also could Bleak Wind and just Behemoth Blade Lunala here, which is a little bit scary. So I think in retrospect, leading Entity was actually maybe correct in this matchup. Okay. They just Blade into Entity, that's fine. I survive. Nice. You Bleak Wind, I assume. We get a double dodge, which is really lucky. I mean, that's insanely lucky, obviously. And now I get Moongeist Beam, which is quite good for us. And I think with Rocky Helmet plus, yeah, the Spiky Shield from earlier, that's just a knockout. If that had double connected, it would have broken Shadow Shield, Entity would have fainted, and I would probably just switch into Ogre Pawn immediately. Then you're kind of forced to Tailwind, but then if you Tailwind, I can just go Cudgel, Water, Terra, Expanding Force. So, had the Bleak Wind double connected, I think that's probably what I would have done. I actually think Entity not fainting here is not good for us. Because now I'm just stuck on the field with this. But I guess what I can probably go for is just Helping Hand. Water Terra, Expanding Force now. I think I have to go for this because otherwise Bleak Wind plus like Water Terra, Water Spout just completely crushes me. But yeah, had I fainted with Entity, I would have brought out Ogre Pawn, and that would have given me a little bit more offensive pressure. Also, by the way, I think this turn there was the possibility of just hard switching Entity into Koraidon to set up the Sun immediately. But I actually kind of like Helping Hand, Expanding Force more here. No Terra from their end. There's Helping Hand. Great. Tailwind, that's fine by me. Tailwind Ice Beam. Oh, wow. Okay. They really read into... Well, oh, I see. They probably were worried about Wide Guard from Lunala. So that makes a lot of sense. It's Life Orb Kyogre, which is more than fine with me, because this is just going to do so much damage to both their Pokemon. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's why I figured Helping Hand would be great. But I obviously got pretty lucky in this game with the double Bleak Wind miss. Honestly, I wish we could have played this game out with it connecting. But... we've knocked out both of their restricted Pokemon. The last one can be Chempao. It can be Urshifu. It could be a Moongus. Yeah, I mean, with sturdy Ogre Pawn in the back, I don't think there's really any out here for my opponent. But I'll bring out Koraidon just to change the weather. Oh, and it's a Moongus as the last one. A Moongus makes sense, though, because that's their answer if I had set up Trick Room in this game, which is why, like, if they didn't have a Moongus, I would have 100% gone all in on Trick Room. But a Moongus was awkward because if I set up Trick Room, I kind of need my Rock Ogre Pawn out on the field to make sure I can redirect Spores away from it. But now I can just Flare Blitz. Expanding Force. So, yeah, I think, you know, in the closed Team Sheet environment, Lunala also has a lot of attacks that your opponents will have to respect, whether it be Wide Guard, Trick Room, right? And, or Calm Mind, for example. So in this case, like, my opponent obviously was respecting the Wide Guard. But, yeah, I mean, since they were Life Orb, like, they had no way to knock out Water Terra Lunala, right? Which was the main piece of this. So, But if they had connected on that initial Bleak Wind, then maybe you do enough where another Bleak Wind into Water Terra Water Spell, if that's what you are, and Kyogre can knock me out. But Lunala, after it gets that special attack boost with Helping Hand support, just an absolute beast here. So, yeah. But I think what was huge here was that we were off to a fairly okay lead in the sense that we traded positively. Like, we were baiting my opponent to knock out Ogerpon, right? Because Ogerpon's such a nuisance for Kyogre, so I knew that that slot would be more likely targeted, and as a result, I was like, I think Lunala will actually be a little bit safe here in the early game, and that ended up being the case, but it feels so satisfying to, yeah, just like get 3 different knockouts with Lunala in this one. Koraidon, Man, Miraidon with Brute Bonnet, Whimsicott, Iron Hands, and Ditto. Okay. A lot of bicycles here. Brute Bonnet's really interesting because you don't actually really get to Spore very easily when Miraidon's out on the field, but it could be like Koraidon Bonnet lead. Ditto's scary. Flutter, I think, is an absolute must bring here. I think NDD for terrain control is probably a bring as well, which would mean Koraidon and Lunala most of the time in the back. So then the question is it correct to drop Chiyu and Ogerpon here? I think Chiyu could be led. Whims Mariah is definitely one lead I want to respect. Bonnet lead is really scary, in my opinion. Flutter NDD is a little bit too passive for my liking. I am worried about Whimsicott Miraidon leads, so I think I'll go NDD Lunala, because this guarantees terrain control with Koraidon and Fluttermane in the back. Chiyu I feel a little bit iffy about, because if Tailwind gets set up, it just gets blown up by Koraidon or Miraidon, and Iron Hands with Assault Vest can also do pretty well into us. And Rock Ogerpon doesn't threaten with enough damage in this one for me to want to bring in. I think Rock Ogerpon's really good if it threatens like one-hit knockouts, where it's like, oh, you attack, my Sturdy activates, I KO you in return. Not the case here, though, right? I'm trying to think what they could lead. Hands Miraidon, Whimsicott Miraidon, Bonnet Koraidon. Yeah, I think those are like the most obvious leads. But I win the terrain war here, which I think is huge, right? Because you're basically forced to... you can't fake out and you have to Volt Switch turn 1 probably. To which I think I could just honestly follow me Expanding Force. This is why I wanted to lead this, because I didn't think there was too much counterplay other than maybe a Brute Bonnet lead. If I were my opponent, I'm Volt Switching right now into Brute Bonnet. I would Volt Switch into this and go into Bonnet. So I could follow me pretty easily. I'm also, like, I could go for Helping Hand plus Expanding Force. There's one other option, just to get rid of Iron Hands immediately, but I don't think Hands is even that much of a problem, honestly. I'm actually really interested in Helping Hand plus Meteor Beam into Miraidon. Because I think Bonnet coming out here would make a lot of sense. And if they don't have Bonnet, then that's fine by me as well. I also think it could be Hand switching out into Bonnet and Volt Switch back out into Hands. Yeah. Okay, cool. Booster Energy Bonnet, okay. Defense, yep. See, I assume it's Volt Switch. They just Electro Drift into us. Okay. I think that's fine. No terrain plus Shadow Shield means we take that, but that definitely looks like Choice Specs damage to me. But if I hit this Meteor Beam, I think it should just KO Lunala. Sorry, Lunala should KO Miraidon. Which means then they don't have terrain control anymore, which is a really big deal. The problem is Bonnet is actually a very good Pokemon into Lunala here. Ooh, we don't knock out Miraidon either. That's actually a little bit troublesome. Okay. I'm pressured by Spore right now. I think I actually have to follow me here. And I'll Expanding Force. Is a little less than ideal. I actually really like their Electro Drift lock as well. Although I think Volt Switch would have been totally strong for them there as well. But yeah, Bonnet is actually pretty annoying for us here. I think he can put a lot of different things to sleep, and I think it's really hard to use on a team like my opponent's because you have Miraidon as well, so you can't Spore as easily, but I think Follow Me here covers for Electro Drift. It covers for... one could argue it's actually more optimal to Moongeist Beam Koraidon here, because if they Electro Drift, you actually feign from Rocky Helmet, and then Expanding Force goes into Bonnet, which does nothing. I'm curious if they switch here. They don't switch. Okay. Yeah, that's a good play by them. So I think Moongeist Beam would have been nicer here. The reason I went Expanding Force is because if they switched into Hands or into Koraidon, Expanding Force just KOs it, whereas Moongeist Beam doesn't. This is one of those, like, I kind of want to take that trade-off. Like, does the +1 Moongeist Beam into a Bonnet really change the game that much? I'm not sure. Now they put me to sleep with Spore. So, nicely done. Maybe I needed Rock Ogre Pawn. I don't know. If I had Rock Ogre Pawn, I could have switched in there. But yeah, not getting the knockout with Helping Hand and +1 Meteor Beam was kind of a bummer. I think Koraidon should come out now. Yeah. So I do have Water Terra here on the Lunala, right? I think it's probably better to protect here and sack the Indeedee. They could Flame Charge into me, right? You could protect Koraidon, Spore. It's going to be Terra, though. The upside of this tearing, it means Brute Bonnet can't Terra, right? But yeah, I can't help but think if I actually had clicked Moongeist Beam, Bonnet would be in Moonblast KO range, potentially. So that may come to bite me later, but let's see. Okay, they just Flare Blitz into Lunala. Seed Bomb, that's fine. I was worried I actually would survive that because I know it would put me in an awkward position, but this is great because it gives me the free switch in now. I think I can just go into Koraidon then, honestly. You can switch back out into Hands, but I think I can just close combat you here. Terra, Expanding Force. Seems okay. Would be worried, let their Life Orb Koraidon and I lose a potential speed tie, or let their Jolly max speed and they just outpace me, KO me with close combat. Yeah, one of the questions I have is, are you clear Amulet here? Given that they Seed Bombed Indeedee also meant I could have just Terra'd last turn, but I don't mind saving it for this turn, I think. Oh, Koraidon just protects. Okay, works for me. They Sucker Punch, but yeah, Psychic Terrain is up. You can't go for that. But it honestly may have been one of those... Well, there's really no reason to ever Sucker Punch there, right? Like, you might as well at least try to Spore Rage Powder. But I'll take the turn. It's also easy to sometimes just forget about terrain, honestly. The downside here is now they can threaten Lunala with close combat. You still can't click Fake Out with Iron Hands, though, which is a really big deal. You can't Fake Out either. If you close combat... I mean, it could be Collision Course on Koraidon is the other thing. I don't know the item on this. I'm leaning towards close combating Koraidon here. And protecting this turn. The only downside here is if I end up getting outsped by their Koraidon. Okay, nice. That almost just KOs them. Cool. Even if, like, I didn't need that KO, I was just wanted to make sure we get enough damage onto it, because now I think we're in an endgame where Flutter should be able to close out. They do actually Collision Course into us, so I wonder if that was a speed tie. We're at Advent max speed. If we're a speed tie and they move first, this actually looks really different. And that was a nice play by my opponent, because if... Like, I thought they had to respect Lunala there, right? Because Expanding Force just KOs you, but they were also Life Orb Koraidon, so... Yeah. With Koraidon being so common, like, how you invest on it speed-wise is a really big deal, because I think it's, like, becoming way more meta in Pokemon. So So we have the advantage of being like admin max speed, which is fairly speedy, but of course Jolly max speed is a thing as well. And yeah, I think that play was risky from my opponent's end, mainly because Lunala, like, if it just expanding forces there, probably just gets a double knockout. So I thought, like, Koraidon had to target me, but I figured even if they didn't, we had a decent chance of just outpacing. But now we can just Moonblast and expanding force. But the Brood Mono was actually very, very scary for us. And then the decision to just Electro Drift right away rather than Volt Switch, you know, got a lot of damage off on the board immediately. But Moonblast does a ton of hands here. Nice. I think the other debate is whether or not Flutter could have come in a little bit sooner, because if I had not gone for that Moongeist Beam, or if I had gone for Moongeist Beam over Expanding Force that one turn, maybe then Flutter can just come out and click Moonblast instead. That would have been nice. Because then with Sash, I also like confirm the item on Koraidon, meaning I can drop its speed with an Icy Wind. But yeah. Anyway, that's going to be it for this one. So thank you so much, as always, for joining me. It was really fun to feature this combination. And I think that as you progress through the early meta in Regulation I, it's something that you really should think about using, specifically because there are going to be a lot of Calyrex Zamazenta teams that are out there. And we faced just a couple in this video alone. So thanks as always for watching. Leave a like if you enjoy, and I'll see you all soon. All right. Peace.